Chapter 13. Down in the Dungeons. 4 torches were flashed onto the wooden door. It was big and stout, studded with great iron nails. Julian gave a whoop of delight and rushed to it. He felt certain that behind it was the dungeon used for storing things. But the door was fast shut. No amount of pushing or pulling would open it. It had a great keyhole, but no key there. The 4 children stared in exasperation at the door. Bother it! Just as they really thought they were near the ingots, this door wouldn't open. "We'll fetch the axe," said Julian suddenly. "We may be able to chop round the keyhole and smash the lock." "That's a good idea," said George, delighted. "Come on back." They left the big door and tried to get back the way they had come, but the dungeons were so big and so rambling that they lost their way. They stumbled over old broken barrels, rotting wood, empty bottles, and many other things as they tried to find their way back to the big flight of rock steps. "This is sickening," said Julian at last. "I simply haven't any idea at all where the entrance is. We keep on going into one dungeon after another, and one passage after another, and they all seem to be exactly the same, dark and smelly and mysterious. Suppose we have to stay here all the rest of our lives," said Anne gloomily. "Idiot," said Dick, taking her hand. "We shall soon find the way out. Hello, what's this?" They all stopped. They had come to what looked like a chimney shaft of brick stretching down from the roof of the dungeon to the floor. Julian flashed his torch onto it. He was puzzled. "I know what it is," said George suddenly. "It's the well, of course. You remember it was shown in the plan of the dungeons as well as in the plan of the ground floor? Well, that's the shaft of the well going down and down. I wonder if there's any opening in it just here so that water could be taken into the dungeons as well as up to the ground floor." They went to see. On the other side of the well shaft was a small opening big enough for one child at a time to put his head and shoulders through and look down. They shone their torches down and up. The well was so deep that it was still impossible to see the bottom of it. Julian dropped a stone down again, but there was no sound of either a thud or a splash. He looked upwards and could see the faint gleam of daylight that slid round the broken slab of stone lying a little way down the shaft, the slab on which Tim had sat waiting to be rescued. "Yes," he said, "this is the well all right. Isn't it queer? Well, now we've found the well, we know that the entrance to the dungeons isn't very far off." That cheered them all up tremendously. They took hands and hunted around in the dark, their torches making bright beams of light here and there. Anne gave a screech of excitement. "Here's the entrance! It must be, because I can see faint daylight coming down." The children rounded a corner, and sure enough, there was the steep, rocky flight of steps leading upwards. Julian took a quick look round so that he might know the way to go when they came down again. He didn't feel at all certain that he would find the wooden door. They all went up into the sunshine. It was delicious to feel the warmth on their heads and shoulders after the cold air down in the dungeons. Julian looked at his watch and gave a loud exclamation. "It's 6:30! 6:30! No wonder I feel hungry. We haven't had any tea. We've been working and wandering about those dungeons for hours." "Well, let's have a kind of tea supper before we do anything else," said Dick. I don't feel as if I've had anything to eat for about 12 months. Well, considering you ate about twice as much as anyone else at dinner time, began Julian indignantly. Then he grinned. I feel the same as you, he said. Come on, let's get a really good meal. George, what about boiling a kettle and making some cocoa or something? I feel cold after all that time underground. It was fun boiling the kettle on a fire of dry sticks. It was lovely to lie about in the warmth of the evening sun and munch bread and cheese and enjoy cake and biscuits. They all enjoyed themselves thoroughly. Tim had a good meal too. He hadn't very much liked being underground and had followed the others very closely indeed, his tail well down. He had been very frightened too of the curious echoes here and there. Once he had barked, and it had seemed to Tim as if the whole of the dungeons were full of other dogs, all barking far more loudly than he could. He hadn't even dared to whine after that. But now he was happy again, eating the titbits that the children gave him and licking George whenever he was near her. It was past 8 o'clock by the time that the children had finished their meal and tied it up. Julian looked at the others. The sun was sinking, and the day was no longer so warm. Well, he said, I don't know what you feel, but I don't somehow want to go down into those dungeons again today, not even for the sake of smashing in that door with the axe and opening it. I'm tired, and I don't like the thought of losing my way in those dungeons at night. The others heartily agreed with him, especially Anne, who had secretly been dreading going down again with the night coming on. The little girl was almost asleep. She was so tired out with hard work and excitement. Come on, Anne, said George, pulling her to her feet. Bed for you. We'll cuddle up together in the rugs on the floor of that little room. And in the morning, when we wake, we'll be simply thrilled to think of opening the big wooden door. All 4 children, with Tim close behind, went off to the little stone room. They curled up on their piles of rugs, and Tim crept in with George and Anne. He lay down on them and felt so heavy that Anne had to push him off her legs. He sat himself down on her again, and she groaned half asleep. Tim wagged his tail and thumped it hard against her ankles. Then George pulled him onto her own legs and lay there, feeling him breathe. She was very happy. She was spending the night on her island. They had almost found the ingots, she was sure. She had Tim with her, actually sleeping on her rugs. Perhaps everything would come right after all, somehow. She fell asleep. The children felt perfectly safe with Tim on guard. They slept peacefully until the morning, when Tim saw a rabbit through the broken archway leading to the little room and sped away to chase it. He awoke George as he got up from the rugs, and she sat up and rubbed her eyes. "Wake up!" she cried to the others. "Wake up, all of you! It's morning, and we're on the island!" They all awoke. It was really thrilling to sit up and remember everything. Julian thought of the big wooden door at once. He would soon smash it in with his axe, he felt sure. And then what would they find? They had breakfast and ate just as much as ever. Then Julian picked up the axe they had brought and took everyone to the flight of steps. Tim went too, wagging his tail, but not really feeling very pleased at the thought of going down into the queer places where other dogs seemed to bark and yet were not to be found. Poor Tim would never understand echoes. They all went down underground again. And then, of course, they couldn't find the way to the wooden door. It was most tiresome. "We shall lose our way all over again," said George desperately. "These dungeons are about the most rambling, spread-out maze of underground caves I've ever known. We shall lose the entrance again, too." Julian had a bright idea. He had a piece of white chalk in his pocket, and he took it out. He went back to the steps and marked the wall there. Then he began to put chalk marks along the passages as they walked in the musty darkness. They came to the well, and Julian was pleased. "Now," he said, "whenever we come to the well, we shall at least be able to find the way back to the steps, because we can follow my chalk marks. Now, the thing is, which is the way next? We'll try and find it, and I'll put chalk marks along the walls here and there, but if we go the wrong way and have to come back, we'll rub out the marks and start again from the well another way." This was really a very good idea. They did go the wrong way and had to come back, rubbing out Julian's marks. They reached the well and set off in the opposite direction, and this time they did find the wooden door. There it was, stout and sturdy, its old iron nails rusty and red. The children stared at it in delight. Julian lifted his axe. Crash! He drove it into the wood and round about the keyhole. But the wood was still strong, and the axe only went in an inch or two. Julian drove it in once more. The axe hit one of the big nails and slipped a little to one side. A big splinter of wood flew out and struck poor Dick on the cheek. He gave a yell of pain. Julian jumped in alarm and turned to look at him. Dick's cheek was pouring with blood. "Something flew out of the door and hit me," said poor Dick. "It's a splinter or something." "Golly," said Julian, and he shone his torch onto Dick. "Can you bear it a moment if I pull the splinter out? It's a big one, and it's still sticking into your poor cheek." But Dick pulled it out himself. He made a face with the pain, and then turned very white. "You'd better get up into the open air for a bit," said Julian, "and we'll have to bathe your cheek and stop it bleeding somehow. Anne's got a clean hanky. We'll bathe it and dab it with that. We brought some water with us, luckily." "I'll go with Dick," said Anne. "You stay here with George. There's no need for us all to go." But Julian thought he would like to see Dick safely up into the open air first, and then he could leave him with Anne while he went back to George and went on with the smashing down of the door. He handed the axe to George. "You can do a bit of chopping while I'm gone," he said. "It will take some time to smash that big door in. You get on with it, and I'll be down in a few minutes again. We can easily find the way to the entrance, because we've only got to follow my chalk marks." "Right," said George, and she took the axe. "Poor old Dick, you do look a sight." Leaving George behind with Tim, valiantly attacking the big door, Julian took Dick and Anne up to the open air. Anne dipped her hanky into the kettle of water and dabbed Dick's cheek gently. It was bleeding very much, as cheeks do, but the wound was not really very bad. Dick's colour soon came back, and he wanted to go down into the dungeons again. "No, you better lie down on your back for a little," said Julian. "I know that's good for nose bleeding, and maybe it's good for cheek bleeding too. What about Anne and you going out on the rocks over there, where you can see the wreck, and staying there for half an hour or so? Come on, I'll take you both there and leave you for a bit. You'd better not get up till your cheeks stop bleeding, old boy." End of Disc 3. Disc 4. Julian took the two out of the castle yard and out onto the rocks on the side of the island that faced the open sea. The dark hulk of the old wreck was still there on the rocks. Dick lay down on his back and stared up into the sky, hoping that his cheek would soon stop bleeding. He didn't want to miss any of the fun. Anne took his hand. She was very upset at the little accident, and although she didn't want to miss the fun either, she meant to stay with Dick till he felt better. Julian sat down beside them for a minute or two. Then he went back to the rocky steps and disappeared down them. He followed his chalk marks and soon came to where George was attacking the door. She had smashed it well round the lock, but it simply would not give way. Julian took the axe from her and drove it hard into the wood. After a blow or two, something seemed to happen to the lock. It became loose and hung a little sideways. Julian put down his axe. "I think somehow that we can open the door now," he said in an excited voice. "Get out of the way, Tim, old fellow. Now then, push, George." They both pushed, and the lock gave way with a grating noise. The big door opened creakingly, and the two children went inside, flashing their torches in excitement. The room was not much more than a cave, hollowed out of the rock, but in it was something quite different from the old barrels and boxes the children had found before. At the back, in untidy piles, were curious brick-shaped things of dull yellow-brown metal. Julian picked one up. "George!" he cried. "The ingots! These are real gold! Oh, I know they don't look like it, but they are all the same. George! Oh, George, there's a small fortune here in this cellar, and it's yours! We've found it at last!"